Thank you so much for your time listening to my podcast, William Wallace for America. I am grateful for the time that you're spending with me. If you're listening to the podcast, you can also catch me on YouTube and Rumble and vice versa. If you just kind of riding down the road and you want to hear one of my podcasts, please catch me on all podcast apps. And of course, that might be where you're listening to me now. But if you're watching the video, either way, I'm going to have some memes for you here in the video section of this here in a few minutes. And so if you're listening to the podcast, you can always turn on one of those video channels and catch me and kind of scroll through and watch it kind of quick time if you want to see what we're talking about. But, the last couple of shows, I've been talking a lot about how I believe that the United States government has gotten so corrupt and that there's so many corrupt people in our system that I don't know that our country can survive without the corruption. I think we're almost getting to a point that we've accepted that our government is corrupt. We've accepted that there's so much corruption in the bureaucratic agencies of our government, so much corruption in all the different departments and parts and branches of government. We accept it. It's gotten almost like it's normal, but it's so intertwined within our government. I also think that our government, our country might not be able to survive without it. No, I'm not giving it a pass. I'm just saying that the agencies and politicians and businesses have all gotten so involved, or shall I say in bed with each other, that it's almost like if you took the corruption out of it and exposed it, the people, the citizens of our country wouldn't know what to do. There would be so much chaos in our capitalistic system, in our free market system. Our stock market would probably crash. So maybe that's another reason to keep the corruption going, right? And no, I'm not saying I support it at all whatsoever. It's not at all what I'm saying, but it's almost as if that's how they protect everything, by not exposing the corruption. Because when we hear about what's in the Epstein files, we hear about the lawlessness of so many different politicians and things going on in the bureaucratic agencies, we just kind of shrug our shoulders and go, meh, it just happens. That's just, everybody kind of knows, well, those politicians are getting rich. It's just what happens when they get in government. Nobody does anything about it. It gets a little reported here and there. Everybody goes, oh, well, Nancy Pelosi has made, however many millions of dollars, not to mention how much money her husband has made off of government deals. And nobody goes after it. They just get away with it. It's almost like they get cover for what they're doing because they agree to cover up something else, or they are able to kick the can down the road. Maybe they're doing favors for somebody else. Maybe they're getting the NGO funded, and the NGO that has the dirt and the goods on them. It is so intertwined in our system that I'm beginning to believe that our government could not survive without it, not because it needs corruption as much as if it got exposed, we would have people in the streets calling for the arrest of all these different people and leaders, and they're not even leaders, but elected officials that have a position of leadership. We would see businesses where the presidents and CEOs of businesses would all be exposed because of their corruption. And I'm not saying all, but how much of it is the question. Is it happening? It's just something that I'm beginning to wonder more and more about, because we're hearing not only from the Epstein files, not only from all the things that are not being released or have not been released or get redacted. We hear about the NGOs. We hear about the different things like in Somalia, not in Somalia, but of course, little Somalia, in Minnesota, the corruption that's gone uncovered for so many years that is, and all of those different businesses are getting federal money, and we're finding the politicians that may or may not be connected to it in the cover up, and nobody's going after them, although we're finding out more and more about it. We're hearing about the corruption in California. Can our society handle if if we had exposure of all the corruption? Would we have a breakdown of the system? And do the people that are part of the corruption in on the fix or know about it but look the other way? Do they also know that our country could not survive if all of the corruption were exposed? Today's show is brought to you by Patriot Mobile. If you're watching the video, you can catch the link down below. If you listen to the podcast, you go to patriotmobile.com/WWFA. You'll get some discounts for signing up, and you will get better coverage because they use all the carrier lines instead of just the one like the big companies do. And you will get a competitive rate to fit any budget at patriotmobile.com/WWFA. So all of the corruption, if it were exposed, not only do I think would cause chaos in our country, but it's almost like that the chaos that they are creating, we'll say, the havoc that they're creating, it's no wonder why we have so much chaos in the streets. It's no wonder why we have so much hatred for each other. It's no wonder why we have so much division, because we see the chaos, or, we kind of are aware of the chaos behind the scenes. And we go, maybe that elected official is doing this. I heard, this, Elon Omar made $30 million or their winery, and you hear about this stuff, but you go, yeah, you don't want to call it out because you'll get called a bigot or a racist for calling out somebody who has who is of a different ethnicity than you are. So you feel guilty because the narratives and the ideologies being perpetuated rather by some politician who says, the only reason why they're going after the Somalians is because Trump called out his henchmen, and everybody who's going after the Somalis are just racist, and they're just being directed by Trump. And instantly people will buy into that narrative. And I kind of made that up a little bit, but that's kind of the gist of what's going on. They tag, hatred or racism to everything that is exposed, or anybody that is exposing something that some other group is doing, particularly if that group has some ethnic origin or is tied to, say, Black Lives Matter, or some sort of group that is waving the flag of ideologies and narratives that are being used to divide us. They've figured this out, folks. They've figured out how to not cover up, but make you look the other way. They've figured out how they can get you mad and angry at the man behind the tree, at somebody who may or may not even have anything to do with it. But not only are they covering it up because they don't want to get in trouble, they're covering it up because, like I said in the beginning, if it all gets exposed for what it is, I don't know that our country could handle it. I don't know that our country could live or survive without the corruption. I'm not defending the corruption. I'm not saying that we need more of it. We need not to expose it because, oh my gosh, the country is more important. The country is more important. But down the road, as I talk about this a little bit more and more from time to time, I look for ways that I think that we can end the corruption. Look, I'm not talking about tearing down businesses and tearing down, things that help people. I'm talking about getting back to our constitutional rights, getting back to the laws within our Constitution, even the laws within our country. There are, I believe that as our country was kind of, moving along, there are probably a lot of really good laws that were not only well intentioned, but do good things, that they protect the rule of law in our country. They protect our citizens' rights. They protect harm from others. And I may not be speaking it in the right legal terms, but you get the gist of where I'm going with this. But I do think that there have been bureaucratic agencies created, that there have been non-government organizations that have been created that have been able to infiltrate our system of government and operate in a way hovering around or outside or on top of our system that benefits from corruption. And there are probably many ways to not only unwind that and bring more power back to the people of our government, expose the corruption in such a way that our country would probably, and I would say most definitely, prosper better for more people. Less people would be in the bondage of government. Less people would be held captive by government agencies and programs that keep them poor, that keep them out of the power circle. I'm not calling for the end of capitalism or big businesses or industries. I'm calling for the reformation of our system, or the exposing of what's going on within our system in such a way that more people will wake up and bring rights and prosperity back to more people in our country. And that, my friends, is why I think that there is so much chaos being created, because it's part of the cover up. It's what pushes the narratives and the ideologies. It's what pushes us into little bitty groups, pens, if you will, cages, if you will. And that's why we have so much hatred for each other. That's why we have so much violence going on. That's why we can't even get along. And when you look at things, what the narratives and the ideologies are doing, and the rhetoric that's coming out of it, it's making many people crazy. Like when you look at things, for instance, like gender identity and the LGBTQ movement, and you look at ICE, and you look at all of these different movements that are created around some of these things. You look at the movements being created around immigration. People are mad at ICE because of what's going on in immigration. You've got people fighting over LGBTQ rights, and they're confusing it with the transgender movement. And what's happening is all of this confusion, no pun intended, by the way, is making people fight in all of these, outside of these different groups, with each other. They're fighting over election fraud, whether it really happened or not. They're fighting over election machines, whether it really happens in election machines or not, or would it happen more if we had ballot systems. And while many of these individual movements may have good intentions, the pots being stirred by the elected officials using the method of chaos through the narratives and ideologies are spreading hate for each other. They're making everybody look at each other like they're a bunch of liars, and the chaos is only covering up the corruption that's going on overall in our country. It's no wonder why we're not solving problems right now within our own government, because corruption has been so weaved into our governmental system that it becomes part of how things work, and the exposing of it would expose the plan to keep everybody unhappy, poor, out of the power circle, and in a system that would collapse if the population knew that our stock market was partly propped up with corruption, that our government was propped up by corruption. So think about that and use that thought when you're looking at everything that's going on. Maybe when you look at all the corruption going on everywhere else, you might feel less divided from your fellow man. You might feel less divided from somebody who has completely different ideologies than you. Again, I'm not saying kumbaya because we never have to give up our own set of beliefs to be able to at least live with each other in our communities in a way that we can work on things that we have in common. Again, not saying kumbaya, but I'm simply saying that the distractions, the chaos, and the corruption are, in my opinion, the bigger reason why we can't get along than the smaller reason that our ideologies are just different. For instance, people are defending left wing narratives and those leaders, but they're not equating their ideologies of those people that are moving them in that directions with socialism. But now more and more we're looking at things that we see those leaders that people are defending, and now we're seeing the little actions that they're doing, like Tim Walz. We see the corruption being exposed over there. We see what's going on in New York with Mondami, and people didn't realize that when those people were, spouting off their narratives and talking about the things that people could rally behind, they didn't realize that it really takes them in the direction of chaos, which I think, as we're going to see down the road in the case of Tim Walz, covered up the corruption. And that, my friends, is another reason for just a look. Just open your eyes up and see these things a little bit differently. And that, my friends, brings me to some of the memes that I saved for you that are going to talk more about, or just kind of shine a little light. As I always like to say with these memes, that sometimes they shine a little different light on, so that way people can notice and just look at things a little bit differently. And of course, I've got my Patriot Mobile meme up there first, but the first meme up. Now you'll see me making myself a little small down in the corner behind the Patriot Mobile logo, but I only do that to make the meme a little bit bigger here. Either way, this is just a red square with white lettering, and it says, every single Democrat in Congress voted against historic tax cuts for working families. They talk about affordability while voting to raise your taxes. Just remember that. Again, that's just one of the smoke screens that they do to cover up. They will talk about how they're there for you. They'll talk about affordability. And they do that to get in office. And then, of course, their socialism kind of comes out in the case of Mondami in New York, who talked about raises, to $30 an hour, talked about free food, free transportation. But yet, when he gets in office, he raises the cost of transportation. And we can look back and go, yeah, we heard that. So what? But when you look at things in a different light, again, not seeing kumbaya, but when you kind of look at things from a different perspective and you see things for what they are, you go, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't adhere to one politician who says one thing that I like. Maybe, just maybe, I should look at the track record of all the politicians that have said these things before. And then your eyes open a little bit. And that's my intention of what I do when I bring up all these different memes to talk about. Because not only that, but these are the memes I'm pulling off of like Facebook and Instagram and X, because they are exposing different things that people are talking about right now. So if you want to hear about things that are hot topics, that's what these are all about. The next one up is by the Tuttle twins, put this out. It's Thomas Jefferson quote with a caricature of Thomas Jefferson. Experience hath shown that even under the best forms of government, those entrusted with power have, in time, and by slow operations perverted it to tyranny. I want you to think about this. That was over 200 years ago. To think that they did not have the big government that we have today, but even then it was happening on a much smaller scale, might I add, of course, but they knew about this. But I want to tell you something that I've read about the founding fathers. They didn't just go with what was happening in their times. They actually created our Constitution off of research of writings from thousands of years. They went back to the time of Cicero. They went back to the Greeks and the Romans when they first were forming government. They went back to the 12 tables of Rome. They went back to the Magna Carta. They even went back to the Bible. They went by, of course, I get it, but that was after the 12 pillars of Rome. But they went back to the writings and the teachings of all of the great philosophers of time. They studied civilizations. They saw what worked and what didn't work. So they knew about this, which is why they created our system of government, which for the longest time kept this corruption out of our government. But generations of politicians have, in time, by slow operations, perverted our governmental system to tyranny, i.e., corruption that is becoming intertwined within our system. Have we come too far? Are we at a point in our country where we can't unwind it? Have we gotten to a point in our government that if we expose it and try to unwind it and make it all legal and working for the people again, that our stock markets crash, the NASDAQ crashes, that all of our retirements go away? Think about how many people have government retirements. Think about school teachers. Their state retirements are often tied to their federal money also. Think about the Social Security system. If we exposed all of the corruption for what it is, do we lose everything? Do we lose our country? So are the people that are in on the fix, to the people that, through the politicians that are being paid off for their corruption in the way of silence, are they're in on the corruption. The power players that are helping them get rich are like, look, we're going to help you keep rich, but that's because it's payment for being silent. Are they really doing us a favor? Are they basically whispering in their ear? And if you're not silent, all this crashes down. Your time in DC comes to an end. You go back home. You live like a peasant. You lose all your money. Everybody's gonna hate you because the stock market crashed and their money went away and their investment portfolios went away. Was Thomas Jefferson right? Of course, we know he is or was right and is right still. The next meme was interesting. For those of you listening, it has two little drawings of two people talking. Next to the one person on the right, it has a stack, a box marked birth certificate, a box marked passport, a box marked residency forms, a box marked visa, a box marked police certificate, a box marked reference, a box marked medical exams, and then boxes of cash. I'll explain what this means in a second when I read what they're saying to each other. It says by one person, America's a fascist police state. I'm leaving for another country. And the person asks, what's all that? They're not going to let me just walk in, referring to all of this luggage, because if you looked at what other countries required for you to immigrate to them, it's not just a passport. It's not just your birth certificate. It's not just your medical records. It's not, they want that, not just your residency forms. They want your visas. They want your police certification that you're not illegal. They want a medical exam, and you have to bring your own money because they're not letting you in their country with all of their laws in place if you don't have a way to support yourself, if you don't have all the right medical exams, if you don't. So even the wealthy people that said they're going to move out of this country. They realize that, but they don't say it. Other people realize it, but everybody ignores the laws of other countries and claims that ours, who in our country, we have less immigration laws than they do, everybody calls us the ones that are hateful. When the people who are fighting for the immigrants that are getting kicked out by ICE, they're blind to what the laws in our other countries. But because they've been brainwashed by the narratives and the chaos from it, and they're not looking at the corruption behind the scenes, go, you know what? These corrupt politicians might be using narratives and ideologies to convince us otherwise. My friends, this is why, even though I do call out some politicians, the ones that are doing things that are blatantly out in our faces, I just want people to wake up to everything that everybody's doing. Yeah, sure. Like I always say, I lean to the right. I'm looking to the right for answers. I look for conservative ideologies to solve problems. I look for things that bring more people together, that have good things for our community. And so as a result, I don't call out everybody. I know I do talk about the left and the right, but only as a form of explanation. While I'm on the right, and I don't think that the left has the answers, I certainly think that if everybody were more involved, we would all have more power because they at the top would know we're more informed. I'm getting off on a tangent before I go to this next meme that I've got. And I'll go from there. If you're in Louisiana, by the way, guys, go check out Signet Landing and go check out their alligator tours over there at in Westwego at the Ultimate Swamp Tours. That's just a shameless plug there. The next one up, that my next meme up is, I'm adjusted a little bit now. My face is behind my pillow on the left side of the screen. It's one by the Atlas Society, which, as you see, I always pull these memes up, and it is, of course, inspired by Ayn Rand. But this is a quote by Javier Milei. The Atlas Society was started by Ayn Rand. It's actually in respect of Ayn Rand. But either way, the quote from Javier Milei says, "The only one who can create wealth is the entrepreneur, not the politician. The politician does not know how to create wealth. The only thing he produces is corruption." Think about that. True, a free market system and the entrepreneurs are not only better at creating money and not only creating opportunity, creating jobs, creating wealth. The politician, if they were doing what our Constitution basically set up political positions for, if they just did what they're supposed to do, creating basic rules and laws that respected our rights, and less about policies, financial policies or fiscal policies, we would have more opportunity and prosperity for everybody. The problem is politicians who jokingly don't know how to create wealth, although they know how to create wealth for themselves through the corruption that's intertwined within our system. They don't know how to create wealth. They know how to create policies that they have been consulted on, air quotes on that one, I guess, on what the right things to do would be to create wealth for everybody. And usually that's in the form of a bureaucratic agency that doles out some kind of money for people who have no opportunity or can't find opportunity, or with the good intentions of helping them through a hard time, which the hard time never ends because the government keeps them under the table, feeding them scraps, and blind to the corruption that's being done to run that agency, to keep them there and keep politicians in power. So the only thing that a politician knows how to do really well, not because, and I'm not giving them credit, I would say most politicians really don't know how to not only create wealth, they don't even know how to create great things or great legislation, they become part of a system. They get elected and they become part of a system where they don't really operate as independently. They become part of a system of corruption or bad legislation that is designed to perpetuate government and perpetuate the wealth of government, so to speak. So that's what happens. And Milley here is basically summarizing what happens. Politicians don't know how to create wealth. They only take part in a system that is corrupt, and where corruption prospers instead of freedom and wealth. My next meme up is one, it's Jesse Waters on one side, and it's actually a clip of him doing a talking about let's see, it's a, I guess, a news story about Chicago's public schools. It says, where's the money? Again, the corruption is not just in our federal governments, in our state governments. I know that's common sense, but the problem with it is we don't talk about, we hear about it and it gets dismissed because we all go, well, that's just part of the system. Subconsciously, we're going, that's just part of the system. That's just how it is. Next, we know it's happening. It doesn't affect us, but it does. It does affect us. The problem is we're being conditioned to, one, it's the other side's problem, or that's government, it doesn't affect me. Or it gets dismissed quickly, so it doesn't hang around. Nobody goes to jail. Some people do, I get it. But we get bombarded with other narratives and ideologies, and we forget it, ignore it. It goes away, on to the next one. Or is it subconscious? We realize the people who supported those politicians that know about their corruption realize, well, we don't want those politicians, Tim Walz, other people who were involved in the Somali corruption, we don't want them to go to jail because they're actually towing the line for the other ideologies that we believe in, and the ideologies are better, than the corruption, right? So they're going to look the other way. So it perpetuates the corruption. The corruption becomes deeper ingrained in our system. And then not only do we not unwind it, because, again, some sides go, well, we don't want to unwind that corruption because the people in on that corruption are actually helping us with the other ideologies that we believe in. Anyway, I'll read this meme because at the bottom it says, outrageous Chicago public schools. I said that wrong. Outrageous! Exclamation point. Chicago public schools reportedly misplaced $23 million while Democrats stall the audit efforts. $23 million accounted for, 77,000 laptops, iPads, and printers missing, $2.5 million spent on tracking software that failed to track, assistant principal charged with $250,000 in theft, and a clerk arrested for $150,000 embezzlement. Might I add stories that I've also heard when these smaller positions get caught in corruption. Let me give you the example of New Orleans. The New Orleans, many mayors have gone to jail. The current one, the most recent past one is under indictment and, going to stay in court. A lot of people that support those politicians that are corrupt, they forgive it because they feel they got theirs. They forgive the corruption of others because maybe that they feel that the system has been against them for so long that when one of their elected officials or one of their buddies gets in trouble for corruption, they forgive it. They give it a pass because they're like, well, they got theirs. One of their friends finally got theirs. So they look the other way. And that way, again, corruption becomes more and more ingrained in our system and harder to unwind. My next meme is by Thomas Massey. Then it shows things that people should have gotten arrested for or gotten in trouble for when it comes to the government. Number of arrests: Russian collusion hoax, 0. Number of arrests for the January 6th, 0. And some people are like, well, January 6th, who should have been arrested? The people protesting or the people on the January 6th committee who were hiding things that proved the point that January 6th was a setup? So you look at that one both ways. I get it. But now where more and more people are seeing that there was a lot of corruption in January 6th as being a setup. How much of it was a setup? How much of it was MAGA people storming the Capitol, or how much of that was a setup? That waits to be seen. I will say lots of people that were on the MAGA side of the fence that went into the Capitol. That was a bad decision. Not going to defend that. Some of them did it unknowingly. We're not going to go down this rabbit hole too far just because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in it. There's a lot of other little stories that are showing there may be a bigger cover up to what happened on January 6th. What it's going to expose, who knows? We'll see. But either way, we know there was some cover up. Why aren't the people that were covering up some details going in? Either way, I know, because we found out that there are people in government that it's been uncovered that they were involved in trying to stoke the flames of that protest. Should those people have gotten in trouble? That's the question. The Mar-a-Lago raid, of course, now we're finding out that more and more that was an illegal raid. The Biden auto pin, it's been uncovered. The auto pin was used to pardon and excuse a lot of people. There's been no arrest on that, no exposure on that one. But some people will say, well, the reason it's not exposed and there's no arrest because there was nothing there. If there was something there, certainly our government would have gone after it, right? Well, no, my friends, because we're seeing all of the corruption elsewhere in our government, all the other things that are being covered up. So wouldn't we doubt, even though you might be somebody that says, well, no, Biden didn't do anything wrong. There was no corruption on the auto pin. It would have been exposed. The fact that there's so much other corruption in our government, so much other cover up in our government. The reason I'm having this episode and talking about this on this episode is to make more people just go doubt things a little bit more, so you don't become so united on your soapbox, on your ideology, that you don't look and say, maybe, just maybe, there's something to look at on the other side, that you don't attack the other side as much or as hard and start focusing on things that make more people look at the corruption that's being used to turn us against each other. As I read this meme, the number of arrests on COVID, nobody, even though we see all the wrongdoings and things going wrong there. No arrest on Benghazi, no arrest on all the Doge findings, which exposed lots of not only corruption, but the fraud and where all the money is disappearing to. No one's been involved. No one's been arrested on the Ukraine impeachment hoax. And the next meme up is a picture of planet Earth with the temperature, a timeline of the temperatures. Earth is cooler now than at any point in the last 485 million years. That is going to be one of the biggest hoaxes, one of the biggest cover-ups, and one of the biggest mind manipulations of mankind. Our Earth is constantly cooling and heating, and they are using this narrative and ideology because they've learned that they can't corral everybody into their corner with just a fight for LGBTQ rights or a fight for transgender rights. They can't corral everybody in pins, in cages, or little in groups on immigration problems or against ICE or against Trump. They found that they can't corral you all up into the same little circle. They got to have many of them. And the climate agenda, the global warming or global climate change agenda, is just another little narrative to pick away at more people that will only pay attention to that and ignore all the other things and all the other corruption going on. The next meme up is Senator Bernie Moreno, a Republican of Ohio, sounds the alarm on what he calls a staggering level of government fraud, arguing it amounts to roughly $4,000 per American each year. And he goes on to say, if I stole $4,000 from your pocket, would you blunt me down like a wild animal? That's what we lose every year to fraud, every person. And that's what our government is doing to us. That meme is just a picture of Bernie Moreno and looks like a hearing or a testimony type scenario. And again, they're exposing it. They're showing us the fraud everywhere in our own government, but all these elected officials that are in on the fix are all manipulating us into our own little separate corners. The next meme is a picture of a giant bug. It's a comment from Bug's Life, and it says, you let one ant stand up to us, and they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1, and if we ever let them figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. And while it was a cartoon movie, how right of a statement that is. And that movie came out of Hollywood, by the way. So think about that. The irony there for this quote, but it's what I've been saying. The people we outnumber the people that are in on the corruption, that are in on the fix. And I don't advocate for tearing the whole system down, because the other part of that, and I do believe that it's almost like the cover up also continues our government, continues our way of life. It continues, and it doesn't make it right at all whatsoever. But like the bug says, if we all stand up, we can unwind it in a way where we all prosper and keep our way of life. In this next meme up, it is this one's from RNC store.com. If you go to rncstore.com/WWFA, you get a discount on your medical freedom in apricot seeds. I know it's one of those things that we were told all along to think about other things in our health is conspiratorial, but we're finding out more and more that there's other things that you can do. Go to rncstore.com/WWFA for a great big O discount. And also XS Sights. I, as you all know, got carjacked a while back, and if I had XS Sights on my gun, I may have hit the target. So don't miss yours. Go to xssights.com. And the next meme is by Connor Boyack of Tuttle Twins, by the way, picture of him. And he talks about how the Constitution was written to restrain government, not citizens. Somewhere along the line, we flipped the script, and few seem to have noticed. Connor, the only thing I will disagree with you on is they flipped the script on us, not we. I get it. We voted for them, but they did it. They flipped the script on us, and people don't even notice. People see the corruption. It's exposed every single day. We're seeing ourselves being robbed of millions and millions of our tax dollars. We're seeing things happen where money gets transferred from one organization to another organization, and government makes an excuse for it because it's all for the little people. It's for this group. It's for that group. It's for the Somalians. It's for the immigrants. Defund ICE because, hey, we might be able to take some of that money and give it to more Somalians or more illegals if we don't have ICE. And there's going to be people who say, yeah, take it from law enforcement and give it to the illegals. They've got a right to be here. We don't. And that's what they're going to say. That's me pulling that out of my ears as an example of what's going on. And a lot of it's not being said, but the insinuation is the same. They want to defund ICE because they don't like it that somebody in ICE killed somebody that was resisting them or about to run them over. But yet they will forgive people who are committing crimes on American soil instead of seeing the bigger picture that the corruption is bigger that they're not looking at. And if they only looked at it, they might not fight against ICE. They might not be out there protesting. They can have their ideologies and say, we want better immigration reform for everybody who comes here instead of just trying to stop ICE for the illegal immigrants. So my next meme is a picture of Nancy Mace, and she's being interviewed and by the English guy. I'm just going to say it like that. It's a meme by Terrence Williams. And it says, Nancy Mace says she has seen the Epstein client list and warns that the names on it will shock the entire world. That, my friends, is like I've been saying, the corruption is so deep in our system that when we have people committing crimes, we can't expose it because we'd be so shocked. What would happen to our system? What would happen to our country? What would happen to our world when we're shocked and dismayed by the people? When it's happened. This is the way it is. People will use their cognitive dissonance to ignore the facts because many times the facts are harder to believe, even more hurtful than the casual lie. It's easier to believe a soft lie than it is a hard fact that opens your eyes and slaps you upside the head to what's really going on. And that's what is going on here. If we really saw what was going on, our whole system would crash down. And I know I've repeated that over and over again. It's more for the purpose of waking people up, because if we start waking up more and more people to all of the facts, instead of allowing them to just rally behind their ideologies or point their fingers at the politician that says the stupidest thing or does the stupidest thing, and you looked at all of the corruption, you looked at everything going on, which is not easy, and I will add, I understand that, they will start to notice and they will start to get away with less corruption. My next meme is a picture of Obama with his arms folded in a white shirt. And the meme says, Obama saying, quote, Republicans rigged the election and weaponized the justice system. You see, one meme one day for somebody, next day, the other party hijacks the meme or hijacks the ideology or the narrative. The man behind the tree did it. They never do it, but the man behind the tree did it. Or if they find in this case, they're able to vilify Trump enough with enough of their base that they've crowded the Liberty corners. Everybody supports the politician, not for everything they do, but just for the one thing that they believe in. But they did it. It's their fault. So it's easy because people have been corralled to hate particular people on elected office. I could stand on my right-wing soapbox and say, Ilhan Omar, Joe Biden, Obama. I could point to Democrat politicians and say, they did all this stuff wrong. Instead, I'm trying to tell you, here's things that are going wrong. And you know what? In this case, Obama said this, but election fraud is bigger on the Democrat side, calling it what it is. But here's what else I'll call what it is. The Republican Party hasn't done much about it because, they win some elections. I get it. And to call out election fraud sounds conspiratorial because when you call out the corruption, sometimes the corruption being harder to believe than the soft lies that were spoon fed becomes unbelievable, and you lose elections when you sound like a conspiracy theorist. Again, if we all start looking at the corruption and it all gets exposed, we as individuals would do a lot better, even within our own groups, calling for freedoms and rights and protection of the things that we believe in individually without hurting the whole country, without forcing our beliefs and ideologies on people. If we were able to rally around the common knowledge, we would find all of us being able to prosper, not only within our own circles, but in ways that our ideologies don't get forced on others. And that's what it's all about. I don't care about 90% of the things that you believe in. I could care less if you want to be a horse, if you want to be a cat, if you want to, cut off your genitals, if you're an adult. But adulthood is different from under 18. So that's where you draw lines. But whatever you want to do with yourself and you want to go do it as long as it doesn't harm others, and stop trying to take my rights away from me and stop trying to force my rights or your rights on me if you're not looking at the corruption of what some of your own leaders are doing or some of the absurd things that they say, in this case, blaming election fraud on the Republicans. The next meme up is one by, I'll read it. The person that says it, his name spelled a little bit differently, is Alexander Solzhenitsyn. If you look on the meme, you can see it. But as I always tell you, when I've got somebody that I got to research a little bit, I bring up some research. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn, or however you say his last name, was a Soviet and Russian author and dissident who helped to raise global awareness of political repression in the Soviet Union, especially the Gulag prison system. He was awarded the 1970 Nobel Peace Prize in Literature for the ethical force with which he has pursued the indispensable traditions of Russian literature. His nonfiction work, The Gulag Archipelago, amounted to a head-on challenge to the Soviet state and sold tens of millions of copies. His quote, "A communist system can be recognized by the fact that it spares the criminals and criminalizes the political opponent." Find that yourself, read it again, and think about what's happening in America today to their political opponents. The Democrats are now saying if they get back in charge, they're going after all the Republicans that did everything against them. Is it a good thing to start talking about that now? Or is it only creating more division and more chaos to cover up corruption or cover up their intentions to divide us and conquer us and then control our freedoms? And that is how that works. The next meme up is by Ayn Rand, one of my favorites. "We are fast approaching the stage of the ultimate inversion, the state where the government is free to do anything it pleases, while the citizens may act only by permission, which is the stage of the darkest periods of human history, the stage of rule by brute force." She said this a long time ago, remember? Look at what's happening today. The government has the ultimate freedom to do anything it wants right now. We're seeing it behind the scenes with all the corruption and millions and billions and trillions of dollars that are going missing and being misappropriated. We see the government do anything it wants, but if you do something wrong, the government will print money to take you to court and control your life and freedoms and break you forever. Forget about brutal force. They don't need to do that. they can silence you through legality, through the law that they are in control of, and has become a corrupt system in many ways that they're getting away with. And the next meme, of course, is mypillow.com. Don't forget your promo code WWFA there. Get you discounts. If you miss any of these promo codes, you go on my website and find them, by the way. And the next meme is by a quote by Ronald Reagan. It says, in our Constitution, we, the people, tell the government what it can do, and it can only do those things that were things listed in that document and no others. The problem is that the bureaucratic state has taken over behind the scenes, and corrupt politicians and the system, and all of that is circumventing our Constitution. So we, the people, are losing the right to tell the government what to do, and the government is getting the right to supersede our Constitution in many ways, again, through those bureaucratic systems. And the next meme up is, to offend a person. It's a picture of Marcus Aurelius, a statue of him, that is. To offend a person, tell them a lie. To offend a weak person, tell them the truth. Like I said earlier, sometimes a fact is harder to face than the lie. The lie has been spoon-fed us for so long, we're accepting of it. The fact comes in, slaps us in the face, and we're forced to open our eyes. And we realize that, golly, if we go after the lie or we go after the fact and we try to shut the fact down, then our lives are going to change. I think the American people realize if we shut the system down, we went after all the corrupt politicians, that our lives would change, not necessarily for the better in the temporary or the immediate time frame that is. One of my other memes, isn't it crazy? It's a picture of Nancy Pelosi. It's by the Republican Army. I got this off of X. Isn't it crazy how nobody in Congress can balance a budget, but they've all managed to somehow become multi-millionaires? It's the corruption, stupid. And one of the other memes says, picture by a guy by an American flag. Breaking thousands are demanding investigations after reports that Somalis convened in Minnesota to formally claim territory in Minnesota for the Somali government, sparking outrage and renewed scrutiny over alleged fraud networks. A citing Somali state official reportedly attended. It goes back to the corruption that we're seeing in Minnesota. And if we don't stop the corruption, we're going to see more and more stories about people taking over our government on a community level. And my last meme for the show is a Bible verse. It is by Habakkuk. I might be saying that wrong. It's from the Old Testament, chapter 1, verse 3 through 4. It says, must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Wherever I look, I see destruction and violence. I am surrounded by people who love to argue and fight. The law has become paralyzed, and there is no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that justice has become perverted. That, my friends, is from the Old Testament. And it's in the minor prophet section of the Old Testament in the Hebrew Bible and the Protestant Bible. Thought I would end that show on a Bible verse and think about how many thousands of years ago that Bible verse was written and how true it is today. Go back and read it again if you like, and I would appreciate you sharing this show with somebody else whom you might think would benefit from knowing more about the corruption and recognize it in a way that we might work together to stop a lot of this corruption. Thank you, my friends. Have a great night. Have a great day wherever you listen to this show, and please share it with others. Thank you so much, and God bless America.